Hello cave dwellers, we've got a fight on our hands today because following our review of this Chinese pie stick, this arrived in the cave. It's a new challenger from monsterjoysticks.com and we're about to put it through its paces. Good lord, that was a bit dramatic for us, wasn't it? So sit back and relax and let's see what we've got in the box here. As per the Chinese stick, the purpose of this is to provide you with a joystick into which you can mount your Raspberry Pi and have a convenient RetroPie solution for all your old gaming. The package gets off to a good and colourful start with these Sanwa branded arcade buttons. In fact, they're OBSF-30 buttons. Sanwa are recognised and well respected in the arcade community, and these are certainly a step up over the generic buttons that came with the Chinese stick. So let's hope this bar for quality continues as we work through the box. The buttons and joystick all connect to the Pi via this hat and a wiring loom. It's a simple and effective solution. The hat simply presses onto the GPIO pins and then you wire up all your buttons and your joystick. There is one disadvantage compared to using a USB controller, and that's that you need to install some drivers. But as that can be done within the RetroPie menus, it's really not an issue. For the joystick, we also have a Sanwa unit. It's a JLF-TP-8YT joystick. It's a quality little unit which is usually the standard choice for fight sticks, and you'll find it in a lot of Mad Catz branded joysticks as well. Its short throw and small dead zone is really what I like to see in a stick. Even before it's installed, it feels like a quality joystick, and I'm extremely happy to find it in the box here. I'm sure it's not perfect, but this build list is really impressing me so far. The case itself then is made from HIPS or high impact polystyrene and has a gloss black finish on the outside. Monster Joysticks are also working on a clear version as well as a plywood version. As with the Chinese stick, there are no control panel overlays available, but it is something they're looking into as a possible future enhancement. I've so far forgotten to mention the price actually. This is a UK based company. The stick sells for £99 and that includes international shipping. Is that a good deal? I'll continue to reserve judgment at this point until we've constructed it all. But of course your thoughts are welcome in the comments section. Let's start by mounting the Pi in the case. All of the nuts, bolts and screws are of course included in the package, and thoughtfully mounting holes are present for both the Pi Zero and the standard Pi. Of course, if you're using a Pi Zero, you need to make sure you have your GPIO header pins in order to connect the controller hat, as Zeros don't come with the pins by standard. Sadly, there's no comedy to be found in the instructions of this stick, unlike our Chinese translations. And we're instructed next to install the buttons. It's recommended that you follow the advice of the instructions and install the buttons in the suggested colour order. We'll see why shortly. And the buttons just snap in nice and easily. It's only now that we need a screwdriver for the first time, and that's to install the joystick. And a word of warning, once this thing's put together, it does take some time to open it up again, so make sure your joystick's in securely and all the screws and nuts are tightened, because it's quite a pain to get back in there and do it again, or as our Chinese joystick would say, a small tricky. Construction of the case can now begin just by slotting the tabs into the holes, and naturally it becomes a more sturdier feeling unit as we start to put it together. The hat goes onto the Pi, and then it's time for the wiring loom. And here's why we had to put the buttons in the correct order. The cables on the loom are cut to length. They're colour coded so that they reach each button without any excess of cable, an important thing to consider when squeezing everything into a small case. And it is another sign that the person who designed this has put more than just 5 minutes of thought into its construction. I'd certainly suggest that they're both a gamer from the choice of parts, as well as an engineer for their consideration to small things like the wiring loom's construction. Speaking of people putting more than 5 minutes thought into things, I apparently don't know the difference between purple and blue. So Yeah, let's get that button swapped out. We then plug the joystick into the hat, and I continue to have problems with seemingly simple tasks when I try to put the case back together. Frustrations began to run high, and this is no criticism of the case whatsoever, as you'll see. It was a lack of caffeine on my part, so 1 cup of tea later, I realised I had the top on the wrong way round. And with that adjusted, everything slotted together as it should, and as you would expect. This is nothing, of course. You should see me with flat pack furniture. Now, we don't depend simply on the plastic tabs to hold this thing together. There are some final screws and nuts, and they're quite interesting in the way that we fit them. You delicately have to put the screw down through the hole while balancing the nut and screwing it in. If you get it right, then the two components come together, pull the pieces of plastic together and secure the unit. If you get it wrong, then of course you lose your nut in the case. Effective, but a little bit fiddly, and this is why it was so important to make sure the joystick was secure, because undoing all of these again to get inside the case really is a bit of a pain. And so, with everything put together and feeling quite solid, it's time to take it through to the workbench with a fresh install of RetroPie on the memory card, set up the drivers and play some games. While I'm trying it out, let me tell you a bit more about Monster Joysticks. This stick was actually born out of a project by the designer in 2013 when he converted an old broken NES console, put a Raspberry Pi in it, and designed what would go on to become the controller hat in this stick. He used it to interface with an NES control pad. Having designed that, he came up with the idea of creating this joystick, and sometime later, here we are with it on market. There's clearly an enthusiasm then behind the product, and as I mentioned earlier, that shines through in the selection of parts, as well as some of the plans they have for the future. As we speak, they're testing options with Neo Geo joysticks, as well as other buttons to be able to offer both budget and possibly premium options further down the line. But as for playability with this model, the joystick is a vast improvement on the one that was in the Chinese stick. The short throw really does come into its own, especially with fighting games. The whole unit is solid and doesn't slip around on my desk, and despite the case parts being made of thinner components than the Chinese stick, it's ample strong enough not to flex, gives you a nice area on which to rest your wrists, but still keeps the overall size of the unit nice and compact. It really is a neat little unit. Of course, when you have to construct it yourself, you are acutely aware of what goes into it, and naturally you tot up the cost of those components as you're putting them in. Which brings us on to price. And no, if you add all of those components up, they don't add up to £99 minus the shipping. But you have to ask yourself, are you the type of person that wants to go out into a workshop, cut, drill, source the parts and create this for yourself just for your Raspberry Pi? It's something I've done before. It was incredibly rewarding and it worked well, but it did take a lot of my time to get it just right. And unlike the Chinese stick, which came in at over £150, $180 US, I think this price point sits just right when you consider the value of your own time. And with economies of scale being what they are, if this proves to be successful for Monster Joysticks, no doubt those production costs will come down and perhaps be passed on to you. And in answer to our original question, is this a worthy challenger? Well, I can tell you one thing, my Pi will be staying firmly in here, and the stick is a permanent fixture in my lounge for a good hit of retro gaming whenever I need it. As always, I hope this review proved useful to you, and you can find out more about this product over at monsterjoysticks.com. Thanks for watching, take care.